Welcome to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo, Dr. Shirley and medium Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world. This is Both Sides Now.
Hi there. Oh, uh-oh.
Okay. Oh, we're having a fun time. Kelly, you're on there. Do you hear
Am
it?
I on? I am. Yeah. Well, hi, everybody. I'm spiritual medium Kelly White. We've got John somewhere in Los Angeles.
I'm here in the background. Yes.
And Dr. Shirley is here because I just saw her.
Yeah,
and she is here.
Lost connection right before.
Okay, so Mercury retrograde strikes again. So I'll just go through the Mercury retrograde period because this lasts until about August 3rd. Around that period. I think it's the 3rd.
We got Shirley back.
We got Shirley back?
Yeah, I think we do.
There she is. Hi, Cheryl.
Hi, everyone. Did you already do the intro?
I just introduced myself. I was talking a little bit about Mercury retrograde.
Oh, good. Okay, well, continue.
Well, Mercury retrograde strikes again because that's what this is. It's often when things just like this happen. You know, any type of computer system will go down. Communications will get disrupted. It does disrupt travel. This is not a time to buy anything new necessarily, meaning or sign a contract, anything new like a car or a house. Well, I don't know. Houses, sometimes they bring you back to buy a house. Anyway, so Mercury retrograde. So that's one of the big ticket items that are going on. But Cheryl, there's more. There are so many planets in retrograde right now. It's unbelievable. And I actually did a podcast with James Van Prague we'll put on our Both Sides Now TV site, on our Facebook site. But I did a podcast, which comes out on the 24th, about in detail all the planets and the retrogrades and the eclipses and everything that's going on.
Oh, wonderful.
It's really detailed, and I think people will appreciate it because this period of time is going to challenge you in every which way. So it's going to challenge your belief system. It's going to challenge, why did you incarnate? What's my purpose? Why am I having trouble? It's how's my health? What do I really want to do with my life? It is going to bring about a course correction karmically that puts everybody where they're supposed to be. Kicking or screaming, things are going to change right now. So, having said that, how has you're in Los Angeles and I'm in southern Wisconsin. So how's everything in LA? How are you doing?
Well, it's the same thing. Things are going crazy, and my clients coming in talking about it, but it is shifting people. I mean, it's fascinating how it works that way.
Yeah.
And it's never easy, of course, but it is shifting people. So it's quite interesting. And I love that you prepare us for it. I always feel better able to handle things when I'm prepared for it, when I know what might come. It's not that I then influence that to come. And some people say, well, watch out for labels or for, but I don't think it's that at all. I think it's so important to prepare for it.
Yeah. It's just an awareness of if you feel like you've been off, if you feel like all of a sudden you want to start having deep thoughts, things have shifted. This is a time of great change just in general for everybody. So I would think in your practice, I know in my practice, big changes I'm seeing with people, things that have come out of the blue. That's what a lot of these planets represent. One of the things I will mention briefly is that Chiron, which is the wounded healer, is in Aries for the next 8 years, which is unusual in and of itself. Because it means, what about me? It's all about me, Aries. However, it's in retrograde right now. And so that rules the head, the sinus, the eyes. And it also means to step out of victimhood or the victim mindset. And it means to take care of whatever the problem is that you're having and watching your health. It also means to stand up for yourself. And the big thing is it's going to take your wounds, all of your wounds, particularly if you've had wounds around the time of 2008. For some reason, it goes back to that. All of these wounds are here to be released and to work on and to heal. And so you're going to have these questions such as, who am I now? You know, if I don't carry around these wounds, who am I? It's going to be an interesting time for people. Yeah,
well,
right?
Because, it's fascinating. And again, as you know, I think that's what actually all three of us, what I love about all three of us is that we're so open and willing to share our own personal experiences. I was doing some energy work, and it was about letting go of that feeling of deep, what we're going to talk about, loneliness. And for a split second, I went, oh, but what if I don't feel that again? You know, when you're so used to feeling something, it's not that easy. Even if we say, oh, I don't want to feel lonely, or I don't want to feel, whatever it may be, anxious or depressed. But if you felt it for a long time, it's not that easy to just let it go. When you notice that you start to not feel that, or when it starts to shift, that may actually bring up a little bit of fear. And so that requires grieving your old patterns.
Yes.
For lack of a better way to say it, to be able to open up for new patterns. But it does require grieving.
It does.
Because it's what we have.
And that's where we actually are going into right now. It's very interesting that you said that, because this would hit people we'll talk about loneliness. And there's two forms that I can think of loneliness. There's the loneliness where you're not connected to somebody, you're just not feeling connected.
Yeah.
But then there's also a spiritual loneliness. And that's a little different. But people right now may be going down that road of spiritual loneliness. And I figure we'll talk about loneliness first, and then I'll go into spiritual loneliness.
Well, it's interesting because even though you and I have been together for so many years, it's not a term that I ever remember hearing from you. So I'll be interested in hearing what that looks like, different from, loneliness, we're innately programmed to connect. That's how the species survived. So it's evolutionary. It's not just because we like to connect. It's what kept the species alive. If I'm alone in the jungle, I don't get to see what's behind me. But if I'm with you, you get to see what's behind me and warn me, and I get to see what's behind you. And so the species has a better chance of survival.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So when we feel lonely, it's really not a feeling like feeling sad. It's a state of mind. So it goes deeper. And of course, that has to do with it. They do say there's a genetic component to it, but that has to do with environment. Like I come from neglect, from lack of interaction, not neglect like in latchkey. My mother was always home, and there was dinner, and she was wonderful in those ways, but there was no interaction. And so that can cause a baby to, the loneliness can be so terrifying. And when I've worked through it, I've gone into that terror, and it's cellular. It feels like a terror that comes from every cell of my body. And actually, loneliness disrupts the regulation of cellular processing deep within the body, which I didn't know.
Wow.
So you feel it at a very deep, deep, deep place. It's a feeling of emptiness. It's really a feeling of, kind of like right before death, where the baby will feel like, I know I'm going to die. And so you kind of just shut it down. So it's that peace right before. So it's terror. If you feel like you're going to die, it could feel, horrific.
Wow.
So it's very much, when we talk about loneliness, it's very much at a deep, deep level. And I remember I was going to group therapy, and this one guy said something so significant that started to shift it for me. He said, I miss you more when you're here than when you're not here. So because connecting was something that I didn't trust, and I wasn't used to doing, and I never got, then even when I was in a group of people, I would keep myself separate. Yeah. It was really significant.
Yes. Wow.
So I'm like a living example of that, and how to work through it and trust that you can connect with people. And connection is not easy, and you do it little by little, but when you feel it, you know it, and you realize how important connection is, how it really opens up the heart.
Well, there are a lot of people that are, say, in a relationship, and they're more alone with their spouse than they are, because they're not heard from, they're not understood.
Yeah. you can feel more alone with a spouse or in a group of people, because again, it's a state of mind. And so it's really, oh, look at, John is putting up the feeling low. It's really, I think loneliness, I think the opposite of loneliness is feeling seen.
Ooh, that must be Beverly
look
Hills.
At loneliness is about being alone. Yeah, yes, it is. So if you feel lonely, you feel alone. And so being seen would be the antidote of that. And I think it's when you talk about being with a spouse and feeling alone, it's because you're not feeling seen by your spouse. And so it's trying to, and Maureen, you're right, isolated. So then you isolate yourself. So it would be finding out what helps you feel seen, and asking for that, or seeing if your spouse has the capacity for that, because there's a reason why the two of you got together. That doesn't happen that's certainly not a coincidence.
It's interesting because nowadays you can reach out very easily to other people, through all of these apps, all of these things. And yet there's more loneliness now. It's actually doubled in the United States. It's actually doubled in the last 20 years.
I think it's because this idea of social media creates an illusion of feeling connected, but you're not really connected. I do believe that feeling the lack of loneliness is being seen. So I remember I still have one card that Sydney gave me once that it's a chimp. So I felt like when she went to go look at birthday cards, she looked at all the cards and she had me in her mind's eye, and she knows how much I love chimps. And so we went towards the chimp card, and she, that feels like you're being seen by someone.
Yeah,
they get
you. Yeah.
That's, I think, the key piece.
Have
you ever gotten a gift that was so you that it just adds a warmth to it, right?
Yes. And I would tell, it's funny you said that, because, and I want to mention this, Joanne Barkley, one of our fans, gave us some stationery, and I really felt that she got me. I mean, it's interesting because this is my favorite one, Joanne.
I sent them to John and to Kelly, so I did my homework.
Oh my God, she believed she could fly, and so she did. Okay, that's so me. Joanne, somehow you got me, and I couldn't be more happy. And then she sent me one, heard you moved. Okay, I live on a farm now, and I have a herd of cows, and I know what it's like when one actually isolates the rest of them. It's not nice. But anyway, she got me. So I find that interesting, and I love these, by the way, Joanne. Love, love, love. Thank you. But it is an interesting time now, because spiritually, there is a byproduct that of spiritual awakening is isolation. So what happens is there's a period in time where there's a spiritual awakening, and the spiritual awakening is exactly what it sounds like. All of a sudden, for me, I had a head injury and I started seeing dead people, and I realized that I wasn't alone out there. And I was very isolated when that happened to me, because none of my friends ever, I was dropped like a friggin' hot potato. There's Kelly, she's talking to dead people again, So that was a really rough one for me, except that two people stayed in my life, which I will mention, Charlene and Sue. And but everybody else pretty much, distanced themselves. And so what happens is, when there's somebody is becoming spiritually awake, in other words, paying attention to spirituality, all kinds of things, the way that people awaken, other people that are not there may make fun of them. And so they, like, oh, that person's a little crazy, or that person's a witch, or I don't know, the dumbest things that people say. People are so dumb. And then what happens is you get isolated. And for me, I actually isolated for about a good year and a half. Really did. I'd never done that before in my life. And so what happens is, when you isolate from spirituality, it's often, if you can remember, it's temporary. You're learning everything you can, and then you will draw people to you that are of like mind. And that's any type of spiritual awakening, which is, so this kind of isolation is slightly different than being loneliness and isolation from a psychological standpoint. Well, it's slightly different.
So why don't you talk a little bit about that, about spiritual loneliness?
Well, you are nobody gets you. I mean, you're not heard. Nobody gets you. You feel like you know something that the other world doesn't really know yet. You want to try, you may meet somebody, and guess what? You guys have so much in common. You can finally connect to somebody. So it's really about seeking people of like minds out there when you have this spiritual awakening. It will eventually happen to everybody. Everybody will get to, whether it's this lifetime or another lifetime, have a spiritual awakening. Why we come here, to wake up spiritually, to know that we are really a soul having a human experience, not the other way around. So your vibration changes and it repels those not on the same vibration. That's exactly right. So when you have a spiritual awakening, you isolate because your vibration is rising like this. You see things differently. You feel things differently. Everything is just becomes different. The world is different. So it's hard for you to be around people of lower vibration, people that don't either think the same way or don't have any belief or are negative. You can't be around negativity. So you tend to isolate. So in a spiritual isolation, that's kind of what would happen. It can last for a period. Well, in my case, it was a year and a half. So, but anyway, and in a spiritual awakening, in a loneliness period, just know you need to go with the flow. You need to go with the flow and work with the universe. And be open to all possibilities, because everything is awake then. You may lose the friends or people around you, or even in some cases, family members, but you may have been the one chosen in your family to wake up, or among your friends. Ironically, I get friends from back in the day. I love that term. That now want to be my friend. Oh yeah, really? Now you do, huh? Where were you back in the day? It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
But from a spiritual standpoint, I view everybody as, oh, that's where they are in their learning. That's where they are in their growth. Okay.
Right. That's accepting everybody's journey and where they're at. That doesn't mean you have to be around it. Right. But accepting it is different. So let's see. Jeannie says, it's taken me years after an abusive marriage to open up, and it's something I constantly need to work on. Awareness is the first piece. Yeah.
Janine, I can relate to that. That is a big one, especially in an abusive marriage. That's a big one. So let's use this time that we're in for you, Janine, because this is a karmic reset, if you will, and it's going to put everybody back on their path. And so that wound from an abusive marriage, an abusive relationship, that wound, it's going to be now time to put time into yourself, because Aries, Chiron and Aries means take care of yourself. And even though you had those wounds, you can still come out of them, through some trauma work, through some somatic experience work that Shirley does, which is, I think, the best way, because boy, did Shirley help me. I was in an abusive situation myself, and Shirley really helped me with that. I swear that somatic experience is amazing, Shirley. Amazing. Think wounds that I'd held on to for years, and you helped me with that. It was amazing. So it can be done, and this is the time to work on yourself, work on those wounds and releasing it, so you don't isolate yourself. We don't want you don't have to isolate. You don't need to go down that lonely path. You don't really need to. You could find other ways to let go and to start to heal yourself.
Yeah. If people are looking for it, it really is. I mean, somatic experiencing is a magical therapy. The magical, I don't mean to take away from it, the realness of it, but it does help with that deep trauma. And go on the somatic SETI, Somatic Experiencing Institute, to look for a practitioner in your area.
John will have him put that site up.
Yeah, please put that link up there. Yeah. So Margaret is saying, I'm right there. I'm awakening. My awakening started in February. I have always been sort of a loner, but at this time I need this alone time to learn without judgment.
Right on there, Sister Sue. Margaret, I can totally Appreciate that. When this starts to happen, even if you have been a loner, I wasn't a loner and I became a loner. I
No.
mean, it was unbelievable, but it doesn't matter. Don't have any judgment on this. Is not about judgment. This is to go with the flow and do that awakening, and then people of like minds will enter your life. And if they're on a different place than you, that's fine too. Everybody's on their own. This is a journey. This is not a destination. This is really the journey. It sounds so cliche, but it really is a journey here. And I appreciate these spiritual awakenings. They do cause it's for some people to be lonely. I mean, and I know because I felt it. I'm sure that's what Margaret said. But you know what? I'll tell you what I did during this time, Margaret, and everybody else that wants to know. I read every book I could get my hands on. In fact, my mom used to think I was like a human library. I would buy books, and I had books all over the place, and I'd read 5 books a week. I had to. Of course, I was a bit manic at the time too, but I did read a lot.
Yeah. Well, but I think that helped because, oh, Nancy, thank you. That's exactly why I watch all your webinars. I mean, I think it's an important thing to know. I have a few people who are in that transition mode and are looking for, and one of them said, I'm looking for my tribe. And that is so true.
That's it. I mean, that talk about an antidote to loneliness. If you can find your tribe, which they're out there, you just have to, even if it's one person, that's like an amazing thing. For me, it was one person that Charlene, who actually knew, she understood what I was going through. She was just, on some level, she understood. And then when I met James Van Prague, then my whole life went, woo, okay. Then I got it again because he really got it. Imagine poor guy, he woke up, never was asleep. He woke up, he was already awake. So he had to deal with this from the beginning. But also I want to say this about spirituality, about this. Operate always, if you can, from love and not rather than fear, and always go with self-love. So when you have an awakening, you may be alone, but always have the self-love and curiosity, as you would say, Shirley, about, wow, where's my soul going today? Where am I going today? What are me and my soul? What are we going to do today?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
it's such an important, thank you, Julie. It's such an important way to view it because, I mean, otherwise you feel so alone and you would tend to isolate, which is a comment that was made a moment ago. And isolating is not going to help at all. I mean, believe me, I did it for years. Yeah.
Yeah, you did isolate for years. What pulled you out? Do you know?
I think that sense of feeling understood, especially with you, because I always had that right brain, that kind of knowing, that spiritual knowing, but I was trained to be left brain, So part of it was that, but what kept me in was not believing that people wanted to really be around me. I mean, I remember I would get invited, like in my early 20s, I would get invited to parties and think, oh, they really don't want me to be there. And what happens is it begins a self-fulfilling prophecy because you don't go. And so then people start to not invite you anymore. And in your mind, it confirms what you believed all along, but it's not true. You kind of created it but I would really have that thought, oh, they really don't want me to go there. A guy would ask me out. Oh, he really doesn't want to go out with me. So I would make the decision for them, which is quite arrogant, to be honest.
How did you push yourself out of that? Because you're very social now. Well, I'm very social. You go out.
Somatic experiencing. I mean, when I learned that, when I started my training there and I had my first session, I realized how powerful it was because it shifts you from a cellular place. It's not just talking. And from that nervous system place, which is what it's about, because we're living on Earth, we've had experiences that cause us to feel that loneliness, and truly believing that there's something inherently wrong with us. That's why it's more a state of mind than a feeling. And so we don't want to make connections because we don't believe that people would want to connect with us. And so you have to heal it from that level. You can't just heal it. I mean, how many times you say, well, just go out or just, if it was that easy, you and I would be out of a job. I'd be, of course, in Egypt. I'd be in Egypt as an archaeologist, brushing the floor, looking for
that's
alien
hilarious. Life. You probably would be.
Oh, that was my second love. Yeah. But but yeah, it's not that easy. And so you can't heal it from that level, from a talking mind level. It really has to be done deeper.
It's also that loneliness gets you stuck. Your vital life force gets stuck.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, where am I stuck? What is the problem that I'm feeling the loneliness? How depressed am I? What's going on? But actually, now is the time with this, with all these planets retrograde, but with the wounded healer in retrograde, now is the time to self-examine. Why am I stuck? What's going on? What the loneliness is asking you a question. What are you lonely about? What's going on? Is there fear attached to this? Did somebody hurt you? Ask yourself. This is the time to do the work.
Absolutely. Asking yourself, because again, it comes from somewhere. If I didn't realize I was asking myself the question, but the answer in my mind was, I don't believe that people want to connect with me. That was the answer. If I would have asked myself, what is this loneliness about? And so it was this inherent feeling of being defective. And that's the difference between shame and guilt that we've talked about. Guilt is feeling bad about a behavior we do. Shame is really feeling that there's something wrong with me. So, loneliness and shame can be very interconnected. And so it's exploring it from that place that I think will help begin to heal it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, John, do we have any questions? Anybody calling in for us? John, are you there?
I am here. No, we don't have any calls at the moment.
Oh, okay. Well, let us know if anybody wants to call in, and we can talk with them about loneliness or really whatever else is going on in their life. Because this is a time now for great change for people. And if you're feeling lonely and you're not connecting, let's figure out why and move you on. Right,
and the
Cheryl?
number to call in, it's 213-893-4464. You see that on the screen. And it's a great time to call.
It's a great time to call. And especially if you're going through a spiritual awakening, I'd love to hear all about it. I'd like to know about any traumas, right, Shirley? Any traumas that have kept you lonely. And by the way, seriously, an abusive relationship, that people tend to isolate over. They actually isolate with that one because there's shame. Like you just mentioned, there's shame, there's fear, a lot of clients going through all of that right now.
And there's a lot of fear of judgment and shame on people who judge that. There's a reason why we're in that, why someone might happen to find themselves in that kind of a relationship. So it's about, understanding and not shaming.
Right.
Or judging.
Right. And not judging. No judging. Yeah. Absolutely. And some people really prefer to be alone, and that's fine too.
But that's part of the thing. I don't feel lonely. Like when I get home, I prefer to be by myself. I don't feel lonely. Some people do, and that makes it just that much harder because they feel it all the time. But I do enjoy, of course, I've done a lot of work, but I do enjoy connecting with people and getting together with people. But yeah, feeling lonely when you're alone is very different than a pervasive feeling of loneliness because of you've never felt what connection feels like.
Well, and it can be really detrimental to your physical health.
Well, they say, it affects your physical health. It affects, people who are, lonely and isolate. They have a higher incidence possibly of diabetes, of heart issues, premature
well, I can
aging.
Understand. Oh, that I believe. And the heart issues. Tell me about that. That's fascinating.
Well, because I think it's, the idea of loneliness, it's because of shocks to your heart, because you never experienced connection.
That's my old office. That's my old office. I recognize that.
I guess an alarm went off, but that's how our alarms should go off when we,
right?
As we're suffering through this. But it does cardiovascular disease and stroke, depression and suicide, of course. I mean, some people commit suicide because the pain is so
Right.
It's just
Well,
stopping at home.
that's a good point actually to talk about. If somebody gets to that level of loneliness, please reach out. Please reach out. I mean, one of the
Oh, yeah.
things, interesting enough, just takes one person. One person usually can pull somebody out.
Oh.
I've had a lot of situations with working with the elderly, and believe it or not, the elderly, who are alone all the time, they love when somebody reaches out. And sometimes there's such a deep connection between that. Somebody who maybe needed a grandmother figure or a grandfather figure. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So, Maureen, what did you do? You went from being an extrovert to an introvert after a nervous breakdown. Oh, God. Wow. I can understand that.
Now, Maureen, what do you mean by introvert? If you can either call in, please, or put in the comments, because introvert and extrovert, maybe we should do a show on that. It's about how we recharge our batteries. There's this idea that extroverts love to be social and that introverts don't like social interaction, but it's really how you recharge. So an introvert recharges their batteries by being alone, by needing alone time, like reading a book or watching TV or something. And an extrovert recharges their batteries by socializing with people. So as an example, going to the gym to an extrovert is recharging. It's not work. It's not, to me, it continues to deplete my energy. I have to spend some time alone reading a book, or even if it's watching TV, but not feeling that there's people around me. But that's a recharge of the batteries.
Totally.
It doesn't mean I don't like to socialize. It doesn't mean I can't socialize. Introverts tend to prefer one-on-one or 2 or 3 people as opposed to big parties. But again, it's a nervous system function and how we recharge our batteries.
Right.
Yeah.
And with a nervous breakdown, what can happen with that? Because that's a loose term to use, nervous breakdown. Usually it's...
we have a
that's why
call,
I'm curious for more information.
From area code 914960. You're on the line with Shirley and Kelly. Can we have your name, please, and where you're calling from?
Hi, Janine. I'm calling from New York.
Hey,
Hi, Janine.
Hi, Janine.
Hi.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, thanks for calling. So now tell us, do you feel lonely during, I can't remember what it was, but you had made a comment here.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was married for a very long time. And got into it. It was an abusive relationship from a teenager. I was never thought I'd be the type, to stand for it. Once you kind of get in that cycle of it, it's very hard to break.
That cycle of abuse is really hard to break. But did you broke it then?
I did finally, but it took many decades. Me getting sick from it because, it was just too overwhelming and, almost, dying from illness and then realizing this has got to not be how my life ends,
Wow. I have to ask you, Janine, what's your birth date? Because that is some powerful story. What's your birth date?
8/31.
Oh, oh God.
Yeah. You say it every time.
I know. That's a powerhouse, emotional. It brings up, you came in this lifetime to experience deep emotional, deep emotions. I mean, that's a big one though. And also somebody would have tried to take your power because you come in with massive power in the emotional arena.
And that's the thing. I always felt that. And then he got a hold of it and it I had none of it.
Wow. Isn't that amazing, Shirley? So somebody who comes in with that birth placement is all about emotional power. And so you have a spouse that comes in that says, is threatened. These guys with personality disorders are threatened.
Well, what was his birth date, Janine?
1/5/63.
Oh boy, what a karmic relationship that would have been. Wow. That's extremely karmic here. Oh my God. Oh yeah. Ooh, he had a hard placement too. Boy, that was this
Right.
is one that just goes back, lifetimes, frankly. But I think it was really about you breaking free and getting into the rest of your life is about your own power and really getting into your power. And I would really encourage you to use this time, if you need to be alone, to be alone. If to learn about how you like your eggs. What's good for you? What do you like? What do
Right.
you like? This is your time.
Yeah.
What is good for you?
Well, the funny thing is, I mean, I'm just finding out about like having girlfriends, women to do
Oh,
stuff with, because
yeah.
I actually missed that as a later teenager, because I was in this relationship and missed it throughout my whole adulthood. So I'm learning that,
Wow.
um,
I got chills when you said that. That is a lot to learn, isn't it? God.
yeah, and it's just
Wow.
been, like, in the last 10 years, it's just been, I'm almost like, I'm almost like, a 16-year-old again, trying to figure out where
Yeah.
my place is in this world.
You will
Um,
figure it out. There's no doubt in my mind. You'll get that power
yeah.
back. Make sure you take really good care of yourself because you went through a lot. Have you ever been to a therapist or
Oh yeah, yeah.
oh you
It
have? Okay.
works out. I mean,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
I mean, it's just, it's the illness stuff. I still deal with a lot of stuff. I mean, all that stuff is kind of
Yeah.
not going to go away. It's definitely better than it was, but it definitely has a presence in my life, and that holds me back too, because um,
Mm.
I kind of feel like, who's gonna want to deal with somebody who's may not be able to do anything today, or you know,
Mm-hmm.
Remind me, what is the illness exactly? Is it Epstein-Barr or one of those?
it's it's autoimmune. I had brain
Autoimmune, yeah.
cancer 10 years
Okay.
ago. That was the beginning of the health stuff. They thought I had brain cancer, and
Oh my God.
I didn't. But everything was, my body was being affected so negatively that that's
Yeah.
where it all came out.
Well,
Uh,
we're going to put up, John, I want you to put up Dr. Robert Gramlich's website too. Okay.
Okay.
Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Gramlich, because he works with homeopathy. He's the world leader in classically trained homeopathist. He's
Yeah.
an MD. But what's important about the work he does is he works with autoimmune. He works with everything, but he really works with autoimmune. And it builds and brings up the vital life force, because you would have been from early on, you would have, when somebody tries to take away your vital life force, which it sounds like that's what happened, and especially with your birth placement, which is all about emotional power. Here I am. I mean, whoa, that's a big dynamic in his birth placement. Whoa, that's a fierce one to tangle with. I mean, really rough one. I mean, rough.
I
Interesting.
mean, it seems like that's an example of when, the body speaks louder.
Yeah.
So we can pay attention. Autoimmune diseases. Uh, pardon me?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely did speak to me. It was shouting out on mountaintops.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was rough times.
Mm.
Autoimmune disorders can be due to unresolved trauma. The body, the nervous system
Yeah.
is in perpetual fight or flight. And so eventually it starts to wreak havoc. Like fibromyalgia is when the nerves are, almost frayed, and you're in pain all the time. And that's being in fight or flight all the time
Right.
for years and years and years. Yeah.
It's funny because I was diagnosed with rheumatoid at 16, and that's when it was the very beginning, and I probably even knew at that young age that
Yeah.
something wasn't right, but didn't know how to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I've
what
always heard that rheumatoid arthritis was anger.
I was just going to say
You
that.
say
It's anger stuck in the joints.
Yeah.
Well, minor scream. And
Oh my God, definitely check into Dr. Gramlich and just check into that, because it's pretty extraordinary, the work he does, and maybe some somatic experience, because I don't know about you, but I was in a situation like this. It was pretty bad. And for me, I was scared. I was terrorized all the time. I mean, just walking, just the thought of running into this person. And I actually did some sessions with Shirley on a somatic experience level. It was unbelievable how I was able to let go of that.
really,
Yep. Somatic
it's something-
experiences, really, because it was stuck in the body.
yeah, I've let go of a lot of it. I mean, actually we are friendly today. You know,
Wow. Wow.
it's been like 10 years. Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
it would be interesting to see or to notice, maybe if you talk to him or run into him, how your body reacts, because it's not really about letting go. It's about completing the fight or flight response. What happens is when we have a violent relationship with someone, of course, the body goes into fight or flight. But if the person is stronger, whether you're a kid and you can't fight back to your parents because it's more dangerous, or even with an abusive spouse, it'll be more dangerous to fight back. So that impulse to fight or take off running gets stuck. And with enough experiences where that impulse is stuck, that's why then we tend to be in perpetual fight or flight. And we never get to complete that energy. So it's not really letting go. We're able to let go, whatever really that means, if we're able to help the nervous system complete that fight or flight impulse. And you don't have to go through every experience you've ever had in order to be able to get that, to complete it. One or two big ones, like with you, Kelly, we're able to help release that. And so then next time you saw him, you notice your body didn't go into fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
right.
That's it right there.
That's interesting that you say that, because about a year ago, he had been coming over a lot to see my daughter, but it became where he was just kind of coming over to watch TV and stuff. And she'd be in her room, and I found that I would just start getting busy around the house, just doing stuff and keeping myself busy. And it was causing me anxiety. And I asked him not to come over.
Good for you.
Just don't pop over. And I totally get what you mean by that.
Yeah. It's something that needs to be processed. It's not just going to go away. It may feel less because you're not with them anymore and you don't have those interactions with them anymore. But it's not something that just disappears on its own. So how good for you that you noticed it and that you set a boundary with him. But I think it sounds like it's something that you still need to work through, to be able to really, so the nervous system is really back at its homeostasis, as opposed to stuck in that kind of fight or flight place.
Yeah.
Right. Because I think I also had a way of disassociating with things that, make you not feel that you're there, but my body is getting all the, everything dumped on it.
Right, exactly. I'm glad that you say that, because the mind can dissociate so we don't have to feel it. That's the brilliance of our mind. But the body is still reacting as if. And so we can kid ourselves by not feeling it. Oh, I didn't feel anything. Or I don't feel anything when he comes over or whatever. But the body is still in fight or flight mode. So, and that's why the body then starts to deteriorate.
Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up, because I think that's a big thing for me, and I didn't realize it. I realized it in little increments, but I still kind of feel like, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that with somebody. But I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Good. Well, now's the time to make a lot of changes. We've got all these planets that will bring us back to change. This is the time. Go for it, Joe. You can do it. Janine, you can do it. Go for it.
Yes, definitely. I definitely feel powerful a lot of times.
Good.
So I'm definitely going to make a big effort because I've come too far to.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you got to keep going every day.
Oh, keep going, Sister Sue.
Absolutely.
You've got some great experiences coming up, so just keep going.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great.
All right. Listen, thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, ladies. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
You too. So, John, make sure that you.
Bye, John.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
John, make sure that you put up the somatic experiencing website.
Yeah, I've had it up a couple of times where they can actually go and find a practitioner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I just wanted to go over really quickly while earlier I put up some stats about that Cigna had did a loneliness study in the U.S. This in 2018, I believe in May, and they evaluated loneliness, measured it by a score of 43 or higher, and this was the UCLA loneliness scale. It's a 20-item questionnaire that was developed to assess feelings of loneliness as well as social isolation, or isolation, I should say. The summary of this was that there were 20,000 U.S. adults aged 18 and older. Nearly half of them reported sometimes or always feeling alone, 46%.
Wow.
Were left out, 47%. 1 in 4 Americans, which is 27%, rarely or never feel as though there are people who really understand them. 2 in 5 Americans sometimes or always feel that their relationships are not meaningful, which is 43%, and that they are isolated from others.
Wow.
1 in 5 people report that rarely or never feel close to people or feel like they are people that they can talk to. And Americans who live with others are less likely to be lonely compared to those who live alone. However, this does not apply to single parents or guardians, even though they live with children. They are more likely to be lonely, interestingly enough. And only half of Americans, 53%, have meaningful in-person social interactions, such as having an extended conversation with a friend or spending quality time with family on a daily basis. Generation Z, which are adults aged 18 to 22, is a loneliest, I should say, generation, and claims to be in worse health than older generations. Generation Z.
I never heard of that. Have you heard of that, Shirley? Generation Z? 18 to 22? I never heard of it. Wow.
Yeah. And so you mentioned earlier about social media. Well, social media use alone is not a predictor of loneliness, but respondents defined it as very heavy users of social media have a loneliness score of 43.5 that is not different from the score of those who never use social media. So that's interesting.
Wow.
So,
That's
I don't know if they're thinking, they're having that connection, idealizing that connection, and reading more into it. But what's also really interesting is that the subtle signs of being loneliness are experiencing loneliness are actually experiencing symptoms. Some of them are actually very surprising. One is which being binge watching TV. A 2015 study from the University of Texas found that there's a correlation between feelings of loneliness and a tendency to binge watch TV series.
Wow.
The researchers put binge watching into a category with minor addiction, where a substance, in this case, the entire season of House of Cards, is used to distract people from their loneliness or depression. So if you notice that you've started pushing next more often than usual, you may be feeling socially isolated. It's kind of like keeping the TV on, for...
No, you're right. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And it's they make it so tricky because, like Netflix says, the next it will come in 3, 2, 1, and then when it starts, I'm like, okay, just one more.
That's so true. I'm doing that with Stranger Things right now.
Yeah, I did that this weekend, Kelly. It's so good.
Oh, it's so good. This one is
I'm not
good.
normally into gore, but that's such a great.
Me either.
I can't do it. I was doing that with Schitt's Creek. That's the only show that I do that. I can't do gore. I can't do dark. I can't do any of that.
Yeah. Now, normally I can't either. That's the empath in us. But for some time, some of them, the way they handle it and present it, it's in small doses, and it's then they hit you with humor, or they hit you with a heartwarming story. So it's kind of like
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. But these days, everything is violent on TV, so it's like you can't really escape it.
Well, do you think that the a lot of the loneliness is caused because of social media? Like, everybody's on their phone. I mean, I was at a family reunion the other day, and half
Yeah.
of them were on their phones.
It doesn't motivate anything to socialize. I was waiting for a friend at a restaurant last night. I'm sitting at the bar, and this guy is sitting next to me by himself too. And whereas in the 80s, we would have struck up a conversation, whether it would have been a love connection or not, that would be a moment of socializing. He's on his phone. And I put my phone away, and listen, I'm guilty of that too, because you get so used to it, right? That I'll just check real quick. But had it been in the 80s where there weren't phones, we would have been talking for those few minutes, because you just kind of, it lended itself to that. Even if it would have been a moment of connection, and that would have been it. But that's what's missing. And again, I'm guilty of it too. So it makes it so easy to not feel awkward when you're sitting there by yourself to be doing something. It's no different than back then if you brought a book to a bar, you started reading it, right?
Right. Do you think people are now going out to eat by themselves more because they have the crutch of the phone?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
And what else is really interesting about this too? In 2010, a study of loneliness seems to be that in certain social networks, contagious. So if you know lonely people, they're among your friends, or if you're, experience feelings of loneliness yourself, it seems like attracts like in this.
Oh, well, vibration would attract vibration.
Yeah. Who spread loneliness tend to be on the periphery of social groups, and people who said that they were lonely actually had fewer friends as the study went on. So that's really interesting. And then another one that really made me say, "Ooh," is that you take a lot of long hot showers and baths. I was like, what? And apparently it has to do with the social feeling with warmth. The warmth of the water. In 2013, they found that people who were experiencing sensations of loneliness were more likely to take long hot showers and baths because it made them feel immediately better.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, that makes me want to ask any of my clients, Shirley, don't you think that, I mean, if you take a lot, I mean, does that mean that you have experiencing loneliness? That's fascinating.
Right. I think we have to take all of those, together and not isolated. Someone can be so it's we have to be careful with that, but it all put together in one, then yes. And so to begin to explore the feelings of loneliness. Yeah.
And then the last point was that it seems that shopping and loneliness have interesting connection as well.
Absolutely.
2,500 people over 6 years found that lonely people often have a strong urge to accumulate possessions and focus on material things to fill the void.
Yes, I believe that. I've seen people do that.
That's very true.
Wow, John, those were good.
Wow,
points, right? That
very interesting points.
Really good.
That kind of just make you say,
And again, it's not to to criticize or to judge.
Definitely
even
not.
If you're feeling it, yourself, but to be curious about it, and if that is something that you're experiencing, to explore it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of times too, we can look at social anxiety as being an issue, right? And depression, and then maybe even grief as to what can lead to feelings of loneliness, because you're
absolutely.
that process, right?
Right.
So, and a lot of times it has to do with disappointment of trying and then feeling, you mentioned that, Shirley, before, not feeling accepted, not feeling seen or being heard. And then not wanting to try anymore because you're more comfortable. I know for me, I actually prefer just to hang out with people that I'm already comfortable with rather than try to go out and meet new people. But then they move away, Not, I mean, Kelly, I'm not pointing any blame at you. I'm just saying, in general, a lot of people, because living in Los Angeles, it's tough. And you find people that, it's a transitory state, really, or city for that matter. And people, they just can't handle it. They move away, and a lot of the good ones do. So for me, and then you got to go back into that whole finding new people, that you want to associate with. And it's,
well, and so the question would be, if you're not someone to do that, the question would be why. And again, many times is either I don't think people want to connect with me, or I feel, rejection. going through that rejection is so painful that in and of itself would stop people from trying to connect with others. And so it's really kind of exploring what's at the core of it and then working from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. Well, we're almost out of time, ladies.
So,
This show
yes.
just fly by.
Yeah, it does. Well, thank you for watching. If you have any additional questions or any comments that come up that you think of after the fact, please send us your comments on Facebook. And where else, John? Facebook and
yeah, definitely. And join the group, the Both Sides community group. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We had 40 some people join last week, and it's
thank you.
averaging about 100 people a week. A month,
great.
which is great. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing more people in the group and for you to share this with your friends. You can always do what we were talking about earlier about starting a watch party. You probably saw those reminders come up. When you're watching this broadcast, just hit that button that says start a watch party. You can do it at any time, and other people can join you and watch together.
Great.
So it's a great way of spreading the word.
Yeah, and feeling somewhat connected.
Yeah, right. Because you can chat with your friends while you watch together, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah. And this is something new that Facebook has recently started promoting. So,
nice.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Janine, for calling in and for all the comments Maureen gave us throughout the show, and various other people here like Margaret and Julie and Nancy and so many other people. We really appreciate your loyalty and for sharing your lives with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Take care, everybody. Have a great week.
Thank you for watching.
Next week.
Bye.
You've been listening to Both Sides Now, featuring the unconventional duo Dr. Shirley and Kelly White. Two perspectives, one world.